to consider becoming a member. A little about Black Women Bike. Our vision is that Black women and girls of all ages ride their bikes for fun, health, wellness, and transportation. And the mission of Black Women Bike is to build community and interest in biking along Black women and all women through education, advocacy, and recreation. And so Black Women Bike do bike rides twice a month from April to September or October of the year. And we also do workshops and webinars. It's unacceptable to this community. I would like for everybody to have their mics on mute, and Stephanie from WABA would be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And afterwards, around 7:10, we would do the questions and answer session. So I would turn it over to Stephanie from WABA right now to begin the presentation. Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, Lori, and good evening, everyone. My name is Steph Paperno. I work for the Washington Area Bicyclists Association. I am the Trails Coalition Manager. I oversee something called the Capital Trails Coalition. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to Garrett in a second, but I just want to remind everyone to mute throughout the duration of the presentation and add questions throughout. We'll get to them at the end. We are recording, just so you know, so if that makes you uncomfortable, that's fine if you want to jump off. We will probably share this out for those who are unable to make it this evening. And that is all. And with that, I'll turn it over to Garrett.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Garrett Hennigan. I'm WABA's organizing manager. I've worked with WABA for about 8 years, almost all of that time working on our advocacy team. So really quite delighted to see so many folks here, excited to talk about how we advocate for better bicycling conditions in Prince George's County, sort of what some of the major stakes are there. So Stephanie has shared some slides, so thank you for that. Stephanie, did you want to go over that agenda just real quick?
Yes, thanks, Garrett. Yeah, so we started off with the intro. Garrett's going to dive into who are the players. There are a lot of different agencies, so who is who. We'll go over the budget process and how to navigate that. We're going to discuss Vision Zero, what that is for the county, and then we'll be joined by Council Member Monique Anderson Walker, which we're really excited to have her join us. We'll talk a little bit about how you can get involved and then wrap it up with some Q&A.
All right, terrific. That was a great introduction. So we're talking about bicycle advocacy in Prince George's County. A lot of that is, a lot of people come into this space sort of with a problem to fix. They are, they have a typical route that they like to ride on every day or every weekend. And maybe, maybe this is you see an issue with that particular route. You see a location that's not particularly safe. Or you have an idea for improving things. Or generally you think like, I need a safe route from the beginning of my ride at my house to my workplace, and none of it's there. So where do I start? So before we get into like the nitty gritty of, how these things get built, it's important to take a look at sort of the political landscape and set ourselves in the context of Prince George's County. You probably know that there are many layers of government. There are state, there's county, there's even more local, and each of them plays a different role in sort of shaping the bicycling options that we have, the biking and walking options. So we wanted to start by looking at sort of what are those layers, who are the major players. So first off, all of you, I hope, know that you live in Prince George's County. That county, in terms of like a government structure, has a county executive, Angela Alsor-Brooks, as well as a county council, which is made up of 11 members. 9 of them are district members. So they have, here's a map of the districts, they're each numbered, as well as 2 at-large members that represent all residents in the county. So if you have a particular issue about a county service, talking with your county council member is often a good step. But that's just one layer because the county council member really has purview over things that the county does. If you go a step up, Prince George's County is in the state of Maryland, and Maryland has a governor, Larry Hogan, and it also has a General Assembly, which is made up of a Senate and a House of Delegates. Those folks have purview over things like state agencies, and there are a bunch of General Assembly members. Typically 2 delegates and 1 senator per district. And so something you should be able to look up, or you may want to look up, is which Prince George's district you're in and which state district you're in, and find which person represents you in those bodies. Let's go to our next slide. So with sort of the geographic context in mind, we're in Prince George's County, we're in the state of Maryland. We wanted to run through who some of the players are. This is both so that you have a sense of, I have a problem, who should I go talk to? But also so that you can sort of piece together what is, frustratingly, a pretty tangled web of overlapping responsibilities. So we're going to try to demystify some of that. Real quickly, going to run through this list of the various agencies, and then go a little deeper into what each of them does. Another thing you'll notice is that people in government and people who interact with that often speak in acronyms. I'm going to try not to do that, but please, if you catch me or Steph or anyone else speaking in acronyms, call us out. But so to start off, the Department of Public Works and Transportation, you'll often hear it called DPW&T, primarily has responsibility over county roads, specifically county roads, so not local roads, not state roads. The Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission, which is a total mouthful, even more so when you throw it into M-NCPPC. They do both parks and recreation, as well as the long-term planning for the county. We'll be talking about the National Park Service and what role they play. Also the Maryland State Highway Administration, which does all of the stuff at all of the roads at the state level. And then also another sort of important layer of government, which is local municipalities, of which Prince George's has quite a few. So we'll take a slightly deeper dive into each of these. So the Department of Public Works and Transportation, DPW&T. As I said, they are working entirely on county-owned roads, which covers all of the county for sure. They maintain a very large road network, some of which have bike lanes, some of which have sidewalks, some of which have neither. So they are responsible for building those, but also keeping them in good shape and maintaining things like line striping on them. And also quite recently, you might have seen some pretty great improvements, bike lanes on quite a few streets. Now, how do you identify a county street? Unfortunately, there's no easy designation. You basically have to find the name of it. You can look them up in the county's road atlas, but basically, if it's a relatively large street, either it's going to be a state road, which we'll talk about in a moment, or it'll be a county road. The important thing to know for this is a county agency. Therefore, they are responsible to the Prince George's County Council, as well as the executive for things like what priorities they have and also how they're funded. Next slide. So DPW&T also manages quite a few of the important bike things in the county. They manage the county's growing bike share system, which has been around for a couple of years now and slowly growing bit by bit. You'll find a lot of that bike share system, the 24 bike share stations around the Anacostia tributary trails in the northern part of the county, as well as in Largo and around some of the metro stations sort of closer into DC in southern Prince George's. They also install some bike racks on public property. So some of the bike racks you'll see around have been installed by DPW&T, which is often like a request that people have, how can I get a Capital Bike Share station here? How can I get a bike rack here? The answer is DPW&T can probably help you with that. They also, a recent initiative that's important for folks who, like us, who want to see more bicycling options in the county to know about, maybe you did hear about this, is DPW&T recently took a lot of input on what they called their bicycle and pedestrian network plan. This is a graphic of it, basically trying to get input from residents about where the biggest needs for new bicycling options or new sidewalks were. And from all of that input, they're going to be releasing very soon, I believe, a plan on how to spend $15 million over the next 5 years to implement some much needed changes, which is really encouraging to see. It's often very hard to get dedicated sources of funding for things. DPW&T is also the lead agency on Vision Zero, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the agency does have a resident advisory group that meets from time to time, the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Community Advisory Group. So that's kind of now that's what the agency is. You probably want to know, like, okay, but I have a pothole in mind, or I have a bike lane in mind. There's an intersection that I want to improve. So we wanted to give you a few people that you could contact. I will tell you up front, these may not be the absolute correct people in every case. It's a big county, thousands of miles of road. But here are 3 folks that so long as your issues about bicycling and on a county road, they can probably point you in the right direction, if not help you directly. So that's Tiffany Jennings, who works both on pedestrian and bicycling issues. For those who have been around these circles for a while, may remember Karen McAllister, who was her predecessor. Andrea Lasker works with the Office of the Director on Vision Zero stuff, which again, we'll give a little more clarity on what Vision Zero is all about. And they also have some staff working on transportation demand management, which is a fancy way of saying encouraging people to get around in ways that are not driving. So if you have a question, those 3 folks, on county roads can probably help you or point you in the right direction. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Steph.
I was having trouble finding my mute button. Thanks, Garrett. So I'm going to talk about Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, the Parks and Recreation Department. And so if you're familiar with the trails in the county, many of them are probably managed by Parks and Rec, but not all. So there are 335 miles of existing trails across Prince George's County, and 49% of them are owned and managed by the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission. Some of these trails, this is not an exhaustive list, but just wanted to highlight a few: the Henson Creek Trail in the southern part of the county, Anacostia River Trail, Northwest Branch Trail, and WB&A Trail. The remaining miles, the other 51%, are managed by private entities, municipalities, and state and federal agencies. We'll talk about National Park Service in a few minutes. And the Parks and Recreation Department created a strategic trails plan a few years ago, and that's really what guides the county's initiatives and priorities. And we have Bob on the line who can potentially answer any questions further down the line in the Q&A portion. But this map on the right-hand side of the screen, this is from the strategic trails plan, so you can get a sense of the facilities that Parks and Recreation manage. They are also responsible for trail development. And so I just wanted to highlight one example of a trail that is in the planning stage, the Central Avenue Connector Trail. This is a rendering on the upper right. On the lower right, this breaks out the project into different phases. The Parks Department is currently focusing on phase 1. It's the furthest along in the design process, but all of the phases are in some sort of either feasibility study or planning phase. And then the map on the left, I just wanted to include, I know it's a little bit blurry, but the different squares or shapes and the colors are associated with a different landowner. So you can get a sense for just one trail project, how many different landowner and stakeholders are involved in this trail planning process. If you're familiar with this project, it has been in the works for many, many years, and that is because there are so many stakeholders involved, and it requires a lot of agreements, maintenance agreements, right-of-way acquisition. So a very complicated process, but excited to see this project moving forward. And then the other arm of Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission is the Planning Department, which we have Michael here with us this evening as well. And so how does the Planning Department fit into bicycle and pedestrian facilities and trails? So there's a few different ways. One way is through the long range planning process. An example of this happening now is the Adelphi Road Sector Plan. There are still opportunities for community engagement if you want to share some of your thoughts about that sector plan. And then another way is through the countywide master plan of transportation, which was approved in 2009, but the county is getting ready to update that master plan in the near future. So there'll be a really great opportunity for you to share your thoughts about where we need more facilities in the near future. Another opportunity is through permit review. So there is a building plan review division within the planning department that reviews all applications for commercial development. You know, if a business wants to create a business along a road and there's a bike facility in the countywide master plan of transportation, that commercial business is required to build maybe that portion of the bike lane in front of their development. So certain portions of the on-street network can be built by private developers or even certain parts of the trail network. And then there's a community opportunity to engage with the Active Transportation Advisory Group that goes by ATAG. That's managed by Michael, who's with us this evening. And the next meeting I just wanted to highlight is coming up on Monday, June 7th, if you're interested in learning more about the planning department and their involvement in bike and pedestrian issues. And so who can you contact? Just included some individuals that you can reach out to. Bob Patton I mentioned on the call, he does trail development. Tom Zyla manages the Central Avenue Connector Trail project if you have questions about that. And like I said, Michael is with us from the planning department. And I will share out these slides after the evening, so you will be able to access all of these slides and all of this information. And then the National Park Service is a really important player in this region as well. We have over 11 different park units across the National Capital Region, and one of them is the National Capital Parks East. Each park unit has a superintendent, and the National Capital Parks East sometimes goes by NACE. Their superintendent is Tara Morrison. And in Prince George's County, this NACE unit manages the Suitland Parkway Trail and Oxen Cove Park and Oxen Hill Farm, which includes the Oxen Cove Hiker Biker Trail and Oxen Run Trail. So if you have questions about anything with these two trails, I did include Michael Chambers' information. He might not be the best person depending on what you're interested in learning, but you can always reach out to me and I can direct you to the proper individuals. And then we also have MDOT, which stands for Maryland Department of Transportation State Highway Administration. So MDOT SHA for the acronym, they manage state roads, and state roads can be identified typically by a number if the road is numbered. For example, Maryland Route 208. Maryland roads are funded and have oversight from the governor and the Maryland General Assembly. MDOT, SHA, Maryland State Highway Administration, has a completed bicycle pedestrian master plan, which they completed in 2019. This is just a screenshot on the right of a map that includes their state road network and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. You can see they've completed a level of stress looking at pedestrian accommodations on this page, and you can dive deeper into that online. And we've really found that the best way to contact them is through their online form. It's a service request form. I included the link here at the bottom of this slide. And then I just wanted to highlight how SHA is involved in the trail development process. So SHA can fund and build trail projects. They have a few different programs. I won't get into the specific programs this evening, but I'm happy to share that with you offline if you have questions. Here's just a handful of projects that SHA has either funded or built across the county. One of them, which is now complete, is the Little Paint Branch Trail, opened in 2019. They've contributed to the Central Avenue Connector Trail and the Rhode Island Avenue Trolley Trail, which will be moving forward hopefully in the fall. And I will turn it back over to Garrett.
Sure. So here I am talking about layers of government. We started off talking about sort of the county level, as well as the state level. And I think I saw Bob in the chat pointing out helpfully that the state actually gets a considerable amount of funding for transportation from the federal government. But a level of government that we haven't talked about, which is also quite important for Prince George's County, depending on where you live or where a trail or road is the municipality. So local towns or cities or sort of levels of government at that scale. Prince George's County has actually 27 different independent municipalities spread throughout. And on your screen, you can see a map of where those are. So most numerous in the northern part of the county, but they're spread around quite a lot. So just to throw out some names, Glen Arden, Bowie, Seat Pleasant, Morningside is one of the ones a little down by Andrews Air Force Base. Hyattsville is one of the larger municipalities. We bring these up because much like the county has responsibility over county roads, how they're built and how they're maintained, many of these local municipalities have responsibility over their own local roads. Sometimes that's a rather large road network. Sometimes it's literally just a handful of roads. So depending on where you are, they're either very important or good to know about, but perhaps not building out roads. But many of them have their own police departments, their own departments of public works that handle things like trash, but maybe also building roads or maintaining roads. Many of them also have their own trails. Some of them rather small, but important connectors. So I mentioned sort of that there are many levels of government that unfortunately can sort of complicate the task of, I have an issue with my local trail and I want to know who to talk to. But if you're in one of these municipalities, there's a slight chance that they're the folks to talk to. As a independent town or city, they often have all of them have their own sort of mayor or city council, all of whom are volunteers. They're not volunteers, they're unpaid, excuse me. So, often have a lot of competing demands on their time, but also pretty fantastic people, most of them. So local municipalities are really quite important. How does this kind of shake out in terms of, again, I have a pothole that I want to get fixed. I have a great idea for improving a street with a bike lane. Wanted to give you a specific example on the next slide. This kind of pretty well breaks down what this looks like on a map. So Hyattsville is one of the larger municipalities. It's on Route 1 in northern Prince George's County. It has quite a few local roads that Hyattsville itself and solely Hyattsville is responsible for. Those are in red on this map. If you know the area, those are sort of the very local neighborhood streets where they might be getting a little bit of traffic and use from people outside the city, but for the most part, it's just serving people in their residences and local businesses. Taking a step up to the county level, you can see there are a few roads in blue. If you know the area, these are somewhat larger roads. Maybe they have a couple of lanes. They get a bit more of sort of the county traffic instead of just people serving local residences. And again, if you have an issue on those roads, you would be going to county folks. And the purple roads, those are state numbered roads. So they are maintained and sort of designed to standards of the state. So if we wanted to say, get bike lanes on Hamilton Street, which runs east-west right across town over to the metro, have to talk to folks at the state level. Even if all the neighbors right next door say, sure, we'd love some bike lanes there. So getting a similar map like this is actually rather difficult for most of the municipalities. Again, some of them quite literally are maintaining just a very few small number of local roads. But hopefully this helps you picture how the responsibility shakes out. Let's go to the next slide. And so with that sort of talk about the major players and the agencies that are working at different levels, an important thing, of course, is how they're funded and who decides how they're funded. So Steph is going to take that away.
Thanks, Garrett. So there are kind of two components that we're going to talk about tonight with the budget process. So there's the county budget, and there's an opportunity to engage in that process. It actually just happened in April and May. There's two components. There's the operating budget, which typically is used to repair trails or manage the existing facilities, as Garrett mentioned earlier, maintaining the paint on a protected bike lane. That would come out of the operating budget. And then there's something called the Capital Improvement Program, and that's often seen with the acronym CIP, and that covers larger and longer term projects. So these large trail projects that we've discussed this evening would come out of the CIP budget, the Capital Improvement Program. I just want to note that the county's fiscal year starts on July 1st. And I just wanted to give you a sense of kind of how the proposed budget from this coming year, FY 2022, how it looks. So you can see the full breakdown, but really wanted to highlight transportation and infrastructure. And so, as Garrett mentioned earlier, DPW&T, for example, Department of Public Works and Transportation, has allocated $13.7 million in the general fund for DPW&T. So you can get a sense of the size of their budget. There's also a separate process for the M-NCPPC budget cycle. You can get a sense of the timeline here. There's two opportunities here for public engagement, one in September or October, depending on the year, and then another in April, May. As I mentioned, it just ended up happening, and you can get involved through testimony, live testimony, or you can do a written statement and send it in electronically or through the mail. And really what's important here, this process can seem really intimidating if you haven't done it before. Typically you get 3 minutes to speak as an individual. Sometimes it's a little bit longer if you're speaking on behalf of an organization. And what's important here is really to, highlight where you live, highlight an issue that's important to you, and explain what you want the county to do. Do you want more money allocated to protected bike lanes, trail maintenance? Really just, make the ask close to home and explain why it's important to you. I did want to mention that for the full countywide budget, that's something that's approved by the county council. And then for M-NCPPC, Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission, that's something that the Parks and Recreation Department and the Planning Department propose, and then ultimately the county council will approve as well. All right, I will turn it back over to Garrett.
Sure. So switching gears a bit, I appreciate that Stephanie mentioned, the testimony can be a pretty intimidating thing. I think, frankly, a lot of the sort of things that people talk about and processes that we end up digging into in the world of of bicycle advocacy can frankly be quite intimidating. There's a lot of high level concepts. Some of it, there's a whole lot of jargon. And mostly we wanted to, I wanted to say for a moment, like, it's okay in almost every case to be like, I don't know what that is. So hopefully we'll have a fair amount of time for questions and answers. And I know of myself, I can often speak in a lot of the jargon and not even realize it. But especially with the budget, just to add on something to that, you know, a budget is not, well, it is a list of sort of, you know, a spreadsheet of numbers and figures, but really what it is a statement of a community's priorities. So, you know, when we look at a budget and see, oh, look, the county is spending a lot of money on transportation. I think it's important. Yeah, thank you. I think it's important to look a little bit deeper and say, okay, but transportation can mean a lot of things. Are we spending lots and lots of money on car-focused transportation? How much are we spending on making sure that our communities are walkable, that our communities are bikeable, that a person who wants to get around by bike actually has a safe place to do that? And I think that sort of deeper level is often lost in this discussion, especially with elected leaders who have a lot of things to focus on. Can often, you know, stay at that high level of how much are we spending on transportation relative to last year, and sort of lose that more important discussion of who is that helping get around and where. So with that, I wanted to move on to a conversation about Vision Zero. Speaking of things that you might not have heard about that sound confusing, the name itself, Vision Zero, it's been thrown around increasingly in the Washington region because it's an important concept, but let's spend a minute talking about what it actually is. Vision Zero as an idea is largely a different way of looking at at traffic safety. Different from how we've looked at it in the past 60 years. Fundamentally, Vision Zero is a commitment to eliminating, zeroing out traffic fatalities and serious injuries from traffic crashes. You probably have a sense that, gee, the roads around us are pretty dangerous, and it's always been that way. This is a fundamental shift away from that mindset of let's just make our roads a little bit safer, to our roads need to be safe, period, for everyone, period. And so to get there, to get to zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries from traffic crashes, it really does take a commitment and an acknowledgement that zero is really the only number that we should accept. Even one person who loses their life from a traffic crash is, think of the network of impacts that single fatality has. A family that no longer has a mom or a brother in their life, the community around them that's mourning. And I think those personal stories, as Stephanie mentioned, of grief and of need can often be lost in these conversations. So when we talk about Vision Zero, we're talking about getting to zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries, and a transportation network that is all working together to reach that vision. As I said, it starts with a commitment. We're happy and glad to see that one of the things that County Executive Alsobrooks did in actually 2019, so a few years ago, was set the county on a path towards Vision Zero. It's a hard thing to snap your finger. It's an impossible thing to snap your fingers and reach that overnight. So at a certain point, you have to decide this is what we're going to do. So the county executive committed the county to reaching zero traffic fatalities and serious injuries by 2040, which frankly is about 10 years later than peers in Montgomery County. It's about 16 years later than DC, which I think you have to pick a number. Some would say, let's make sure it's realistic. Others would say, let's be ambitious and commit to something and work hard so that we actually try to get there. But picked a number, and that's important. Another focus of it is actually having good data, understanding the problem, understanding where serious injuries and serious traffic crashes are happening. And so to Prince George's County's credit, you see on the screen a map of pulling together some of that data that's available to sort of visualize and better understand where the dangers are. The county did put together a Vision Zero action plan, which was released, I think, later in 2019. This puts the Department of Public Works and Transportation as sort of one of the major lead agencies. But there are a series of tactics that the county is committed to using. Engineering is one, education is one, enforcement is a piece of it, but also a focus on equity and evaluation, coming back to the table and saying, how did we do over the past year? What can we change? And when you look at the data, I think the evaluation portion is really important, because just looking at this chart here that shows fatalities from traffic crashes year over year, the trend lines in Prince George's County and certainly in the country are not good. We see more fatalities year after year. The impacts there for people biking are obvious. We want to get where we're going when we hop on our bike to go somewhere, when we step out the door and walk down the sidewalk to go to a local store. So Vision Zero is pretty heady stuff. To take a step, next slide, wanted to show you some numbers to sort of make it that this can be pretty morally heavy. But it is important to sort of recognize the scope and scale of this problem. In the United States, 40,000 people a year lose their lives in traffic crashes. And a growing percentage of those are pedestrians, almost 7,000 last year. In Prince George's County, a large percentage of those are people riding their bikes, with on average 1 or 2 bicyclist fatalities every year. You may think, oh, that's not very high. But when you consider that the rate of bicycling in Prince George's County, the number of people compared to the whole that are actually using a bike to get around, it's less than 1%. What these numbers show is that there's a really unacceptable number of crashes that are seriously hurting, if not killing people around the county. So we have a lot of work to do. The plan is a great start. Putting funding behind it is a great start. Frankly, it's a hard thing to do. And certainly we need advocates like you all to be pushing behind us, and also holding elected officials and the people they oversee to account. Yeah, and it can be quite heady. So with that, I know that we are expecting, yes. So with that, we're really pleased to have a special guest with us. So I hope you all, oh yes, please.
Okay, before we introduce her, I just wanted to say a few words. I wanted to tell why I got into advocacy. I live in PG County. I live in Clinton, Maryland. And a few years ago, when gases went to $4 a gallon, that's when I started riding my bike. And that's when I realized if I rode to the drugstore to pick up my medicine, there was no bike lanes, there was no structure, there was not even a bike rack for me to park my bike to. And it was really a very harrowing experience to be out there on the road with no sort of protection anywhere for me. And so that's why I became involved in it. And just this year in PG County, we had at least 14 pedestrian and cyclist deaths since January to April. In 4 months, there's been at least 14 deaths in the county. And we really do need safe roadways and bike infrastructure And one of my pet peeves is that the county encourage us to exercise, to walk more, to bike more, but they don't provide the infrastructure for us to do that safely. So that's the reason I am full-heartedly and passionately involved in advocating. And I'm so glad that so many of y'all are here tonight to learn how to do this, because it was really hard to learn who to talk to, who is in charge of what, who do you go to. And I thank WABA for putting together this information for us. And with that, Garrett or Stephanie, you can introduce the councilwoman.
I really appreciate that. And again, thank you for telling that story, because honestly, that is what drives change. That's what brings people together. And if you can tell a good story about why you got into this and what really drives you, then you can move other people. So without further ado, I'm really pleased that we're joined tonight by Councilmember Anderson Walker. And I don't think I'll say anything more. Just turn over the mic. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I just want to say it's an honor to be here with WABA and Black Women Bike. Appreciate that. We've done some great work together with WABA and Greg Belling, certainly during the period of time where we started our hashtag Driving at Home campaign. We kicked off in February 2019 for the purpose of changing driving culture, for making sure that everyone's safe on the roads, whether you're driving a vehicle, whether you're a person on a bicycle or moped or walking for that matter. So street safety is key. I do want to say that we have had the pleasure certainly of kicking off our hashtag Driving at Home as a precursor actually to the institution of our Prince George's County Vision Zero program. So we kind of feel like we're ahead of the curve to some degree. But we know there's a lot more to do. And during that time, the DPW&T has established the Vision Zero. We've seen more bike lanes being established in the southern part of the county. And that's the area of the county that I represent. Again, I'm Monique Anderson Walker. I represent District 8. And that is the area from National Harbor, which is the westernmost side, to easternmost at Joint Base Andrews. And safety is key. I am a cyclist myself. And most recently, I rode the Henson Trails about 2 weeks ago with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning to look at some of the challenges with connectivity that we have there. With that said, I have advocated for funding for our trailheads in the southern part of the county for greater connectivity to join the southern part to the northern parts of the county, or for that matter, just the southern parts to connect without fear of getting hit. I spoke today with Senator Ben Cardin about federal funding that we can get for the purpose of instituting greater paths. And he's on the same page. We recognize infrastructure is key. So I definitely want to thank you, Lori Williams, for the video that I did get to watch. And you and I are on the same page with that. Some of the same challenges I had trying to traverse roadways to even get to paths was challenging. So we're working on that. It starts with the advocacy, and then of course everybody plays a role in getting this work done. So I'm thanking you all so much. Garrett, thank you so much, Stephanie, for your role in this and having me here today. I do want to say that we've also had charrettes over the past year looking at redevelopment and how our redevelopment can incorporate trailheads. Specifically in the Henson Creek area, which is where the giant, I don't know how familiar you are, but Livingston Square, which is about a 26-acre area that we're looking to redevelop. And that is right for connectivity with trailheads to actually connect one side of 210 to the other side of 210, going in underpasses. So we're on the same page there. We have NACO, the National Association of Counties, who will be here at National Harbor, Gaylord, July 9th through the 12th. And I have asked Maryland National Capital Park and Planning to provide a tour, bike tour for them so that they can see what we have. But I think I might actually reach out to, I think you said Michael, and I need to get that name again, with the Department of Interior for our Oxen Run location. Are you familiar with that, the Oxen Run trails? because of the connectivity, obviously, with National Harbor. But I just want to thank you again so much. We're all about wellness and vibrancy in the southern part of the county. And I want to make sure that we continue to have good partnerships, certainly with entities like yours and advocacy groups that can help us get this done. So thank you again. And I look forward to collaborating with you in the future as a biker, of course, and as an advocator as well, as a cyclist, I should say, and an advocate as well, to make sure that we improve our environment and our mental and physical wellness and safety. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you very much for being here, Ms. Walker.
Thank you so much. That's great. So I'm going to do a quick slide on how you can get involved, and then we're going to open it up for questions. All right. So one way I already mentioned is to get involved in the budget process, which happens, like I mentioned, twice a year, where you can testify either verbally or through written testimony. We worked with Lori just a couple weeks ago to disseminate some talking points, and happy to help in any way we can to kind of navigate you through that process. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. But another great way is to contact your elected officials. So your district's council member. There's easy tools online to figure out who your council member is, which I can include in the post webinar notes. But definitely figure out who your district's council member is, and let them know that more bike lanes and trails or whatever is important to you, let them know what that is, and that you want to see more resources allocated to that moving forward. Something that is tangible and happening right now is the Capitol Trails Coalition just released what we are calling an impact report. And it's an economic analysis quantifying the benefits that trails have for our region. And so we want to let our elected officials know that trails are great and we want them to be connected and we want more of them. So if you go on WABA's website, waba.org, you can see on the right-hand side, if you go down to contact your local elected official, there's a pre-populated form on the left-hand side of the screen. You just fill in your name, where you live, and it will send a note out to your local elected officials saying that we want to complete our trail network. So that's a simple action you can take. Another action is to sign up for our newsletters if you're interested in getting updates. We have specific newsletters for trails on the Capitol Trails Coalition website, and then we have one for WABA as well. So definitely sign up for those and stay involved, and you'll get many updates from us on what's happening around the county. And I did include our contact information here as well. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will turn it back over to Lori to take some questions.
All right. And one other thing is WABA also has an advocacy group for PG County. And so if you are interested in joining that group, please contact WABA too. And we need more people in that group to advocate. And I also wanted to let you know that Robin Short is also on the call today. She is also a leader with Black Women Bike, and we're happy to have Robin here with us tonight too. Now with that, we will open up the floor for questions. One of the questions I saw was how to get on the Active Transportation Advisory Group email. And you can do that by contacting Michael Jackson. And if you look through the chats, Michael Jackson had already put out his email there. Another thing that I wanted to point out was that for the budget, the county had identified $15 million over the next 5 years. And $15 million is not a lot of money for 5 years for pedestrian and biking infrastructure and safety. So if we can write letters to our council people and ask that they put more money in the pot for that, that would be helpful. And I wanted to point out that PG County had 335 miles of existing trail already. And I don't know if everybody is aware of that or not. And that the Department of Public Works and Transportation is responsible for nearly 2,000 miles of county roads. So that's just a highlight for you all. Again, that's 2,000 miles of county road by the Department of Public Works and Transportation. Okay.
Lori, I see that we have a question, but I did want to maybe follow on to that. Your point about $15 million sounding like a lot of money, but spread over 5 years not being an extreme amount. You're spot on. I raised that because it is really critical that we do get funds devoted to improving biking and walking in the county. But when you compare that to, as you said, 2,000 miles of county roads, or even the cost of putting in a sidewalk, which can be upwards of $500,000 to $1 million for a mile, doing $3 million a year does seem to pale in comparison to sort of the scope of the needs. So I want to thank you for bringing that up. On the one hand, we applaud that this money was committed because that means that those funds weren't put towards another project. But it's hard to say that it's enough. So thanks for that.
Okay. The question I see from Yvette is with respect to trail creation and on-road bike facilities, how much coordination and engagement does Prince George's, Montgomery, and DC have with one another to improve continuity across county boundaries? Who would like to speak to that question?
Bob,
I can speak to it from a trails point of view.
Okay.
that'd be great.
How about you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, I'm Bob Patton. I'm the trail program manager for the Park and Recreation Department as part of Park and Planning Commission. Yeah, I got to go on a ride with Monique and do that hill on Oxen Hill Road. We got a lot of roads named after hills. Okay, so I coordinate regularly with the trails point person in the District of Columbia, and I coordinate regularly with the trails point person in Montgomery County Parks. And I know both of them well, and we have we know each other's trail systems and which trails cross over, what kind of trail projects we're prioritizing for crossover. And I think the people in those jurisdictions have been here long enough to know each other and kind of know the trail system. We also participate in regional meetings or small groups of people on different topics. The National Park Service has staff in the region has been really helpful, pulling us together to talk about regional counting on the trail system and talking about making a joint funding request for federal infrastructure funds and a variety of issues. And it's really great to have the National Park Service pulling people together from the district, from Maryland, from Prince George's, and offering help and working with us. So I think we have fairly good coordination. And if anybody has particular crossover points between jurisdictions, I'm happy to answer specific questions. We're working on the bridge across the Patuxent River, and we've been coordinating with Anne Arundel County on that with their Public Works Department. So I feel like I'm well connected to our neighbors.
Hi, Bob. Thank you. I'd like to also add on to that.
Mike, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hi. I'm Michael Jackson. I'm a planner coordinator with the Prince George's County Planning Department. I was formerly the Director of Bicycle and Pedestrian Access with the Maryland Department of Transportation, which has been helpful to give me a statewide perspective of things. The Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments has a bicycle and pedestrian subcommittee that meets bi-monthly on Tuesdays. I don't remember if it's the first or second month, but they pull together representatives from the various government agencies, stretching from Prince William County up to Frederick County and the jurisdictions in between. One of the things that they do is to put together a constrained funding map of bicycle and pedestrian proposals throughout the region, and so at that point, people get to meet their counterparts from other jurisdictions. Plans are often aligned together to produce a regional transportation plan. So there is, as Bob pointed out, there is definitely coordination between the various jurisdictions, including Montgomery, Prince George's, and DC.
Thank you. Dan, do you have a question?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to slowly type something out, but good to see you and Steph and Lori so soon after our recent training. I was just curious, one thing that I've noticed over the last year that seems like a real positive is a lot of agencies are using maps for soliciting public comments. So like ArcGIS and other formats to collect data. One thing I've noticed though is that there's a lot of overlap. And so Prince George's County Department of Public Works and Transportation recently solicited comments on bike infrastructure. It wasn't very well advertised, but they did have a really fantastic map for collecting that data. And then shortly after that, like the Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission solicited a number of comments on sector plans that overlapped with a lot of those areas. And then shortly after that, Maryland Department of Transportation released a map asking for a pedestrian infrastructure plan. And it's great because it's a great way to provide feedback, but it does feel like you spend hours adding comments and then it's like a new agency asking for the same comments and then the same comments. Is there any recommendation on how you can do that? And then also just say, please see this other map where people have provided a lot of feedback that's really meaningful in another format?
Hi, this is Michael Jackson again. I don't know if there would be a way of combining because these agencies kind of do things for different purposes, and a lot of it depends on getting funded for a project. So maybe MDOT may think of, well, let's do this, and it may be a statewide effort, which would say include Prince George's County. And then Department of Public Works and Transportation staff may have sold their leadership on, well, we need to address details locally on say county maintained roadways. And so they have a separate purpose that seems, related, but it is separate. So with all the various government agencies within the state, plus the National Park Service and the federal government, I wouldn't count on maybe streamlining it, just from my opinion.
I appreciate that. And I'm certainly not counting on it, but I will just say, like, for the county level, I probably spent several hours commenting on various roadways trying to focus on county and local roadways. And then again, just shortly after that, did the same thing with the sector plan for the Maryland National Capital Planning Commission. And then now I recently saw that the MDOT is now requesting the same sort of comments on the state roadways. And again, none of this is very well advertised. And so you're asking, I think, a lot of community members to then go in and do the exact same sets of comments. So I guess I'm just looking for like a way we might be able to leverage the fact that folks have spent hours and hours commenting on various maps to try to, like, in this case for MDOT, rather than have folks go back and recreate maps that have already been provided to the county and then the planning commission, to somehow communicate that to the state level. I mean, I think a lot of advocates are going back and recreating the same things they've commented on. It's just very time consuming, and it seems very duplicative and not very efficient.
Dan, I hear you, and I will take that to heart, and thank you for participating and giving your input, because it takes a lot of effort. Not too many people do, so it's valuable. So thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
And I wanted to throw out a quick comment on that, and I see that Bob might have his hand raised as well. I think that exact frustration, which I share, and some of it is sort of technical and structural in nature. That is why I started with sort of what are the layers of government, who has purview over what, so that when you get, if you do get the chance to see, to find out about an opportunity for input like that, the first question should be for you, who is asking for this feedback? What do they have purview over? If it's a local, public works department or a local municipality, they're probably wondering most about, first off, what are your thoughts about our local streets? And also in that case, what are your thoughts about what our towns ask should be of the county or of the state? So it's kind of bottom up. But when you're talking about the state, they're not going to make changes to a local street. They're not going to. So save your words on that. I will. So I think, like, thinking of it from the bottom up instead of the top down. Really, the most local government is where a lot of the big changes can happen, because they have that local control. But yes, share your frustration there, and agree that those maps can be great, but also, also if you find yourself spending a lot of time on the maps, a tactic I will often use is take a step away from the map and list out, what are my priorities? What's most important to me? Anyway, that's it.
I have some additional comments about some advocacy tips to be an effective advocate. And I've been an advocate, I've been a consultant, and I've worked for the government. So I've seen this from every angle. One thing I'd like to recommend that people in this group do is see how many of the county council districts are represented, and try to form just small groups of 2 or 3 people who will once a year meet with their county council person and talk about bicycling or biking and walking. And it can be Vision Zero, it can be trails, it can be anybody's road. And make sure that that county council person and their staff understands the stuff we were trying to get taught today, so that they become an effective advocate, because that's really where the priorities for the county start. When the state comes to the county and they say, what are your priorities? It's the county council people that get to say what our transportation priorities are, and the county executive. And so make it an annual thing. Another thing is the map that Garrett showed of the municipalities was really helpful. Some general tips, it's very confusing who owns the road. Outside the Beltway and in the middle and southern part of the county where the development is newer, say in the last 30, 40 years, that's newer because this is a county that goes back pretty far. The streets that people live on are county roads. If you live in Hyattsville or College Park or District Heights, any of those municipalities, the local streets that people live on are usually local roads. And so I tend to kind of start with a general understanding of what part of the county are we talking about and what's the likely role of local government. I want to clarify something, Steph. One thing that you said took me aback. The county's capital budget that the county council approves for the county tax money, they do not fund trails through the Department of Public Works and Transportation. The Department of Public Works and Transportation, I think, doesn't maintain any trails no matter who built them. The state, Park and Planning, an HOA, a municipality. Yet there are trails that are not taken care of by the Parks Department that are along state roadways and county roadways. So one thing is still not really clear with trails, not on road facilities, but with the off-road trails, is who's really taking care of all of them? And do we all know who plays a role and which parts were our agencies responsible for? Another advocacy kind of tip is, and this does relate to the Department of Public Works and Transportation and the county government, and that is they do traffic calming. And especially in that central and southern part of the county where they own the neighborhood streets in these larger residential developments, and they own the collector roads, they have a traffic calming program. And often the concern that you can rally a few of your neighbors around if you live in those parts of the county is usually bike and pedestrian safety, or pedestrian safety, or safety from cars, safety from people cutting through, driving too fast, and all of that. And so traffic calming is a key place to find your advocacy partners. And it's a key thing that the Department of Public Works and Transportation plays the leading role. If it's a municipality like Hyattsville or College Park, or Bowie, the larger municipalities, they have traffic calming programs for the streets that they own. But the county takes care of a lot of residential streets in that regard. And the county is becoming more and more open to the more innovative traffic calming type designs. So those were just some tips that I wanted to throw out. And also to clarify that of those 300 and some miles of trails in the county, about half of those are natural surface trails counted in that total.
Thank you, Bob. Robin, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Thanks, Lori. So I know we've talked a lot about some of the larger infrastructure and maintenance and sort of roadway type of projects, but for those of us who may be everyday trail users and we need to report a problem that's relatively minor. For example, there's a tree down and it's blocking the trail and it needs to be, cut up and removed. For those types of issues, whom should people reach out to get those types of issues resolved, or at least reported so that somebody knows about it?
I can answer that for the Parks Department, which many of those situations would be in park and planning parks on park and planning trails. You would contact our help desk, and they are the general first point of contact for renting a picnic shelter or reporting a tree down on a trail. And their job is to know who to send it to. I have been taking a lot of those concerns because people haven't known, but I don't want to be the main point person when there's 15 young people being employed to know everything about the Parks Department that there is to know. And they're really good. When you talk to them, what you've said and what you've asked for gets entered into a database, and they keep track of making sure that everything gets referred out. And so that's our accounting system with accountability to the public. And now you're going to ask me, what's the phone number of the help desk? And that is 301-699. I think it's 2255.
Spot on, 2255. I just dropped the link in the
yeah,
in the
and
chat.
and if you get the numbers mixed up, you're going to get me because I'm 2522. And the best thing to do is to take a picture of it, or take two pictures. I tell people with your phone, one that's close enough so it's clearly shows what the problem is and it's on a trail, and one or two that's further back that shows the setting and hopefully something a little more unique about that location so we can find it. Because in the summer, a black piece of asphalt with water nearby and greenery around it, that could be anywhere in our park system. So we look for having some kind of unique identifier, a dead tree, a really big, beautiful tree. So that helps our maintenance people make sure that they find the exact problem.
Okay.
And the people on the help desk, if you don't know the name of the trail, get as much geographic information as you can, and then see if the help desk people can help you. And if they can't help you and nail it down, they'll call me. So I'm happy to get involved if I'm really needed.
Okay.
Hi.
I had one more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Robin.
Yeah.
Go ahead and finish with your question, Robin.
Okay, I had one more question that's kind of related to, I guess, development projects. So, for example, I live right off of Lotsford Road, and I'm right across from where they'll build University of Maryland Medical Center is being built. And so Lori mentioned earlier, I think, about how, let's say they're building a new housing development, and, the developers will go ahead and put in a bike lane in the section where they're building. And, whatever municipality is responsible for the rest of it, right? So let's say I live in this neighborhood and I'm like, hey, while you guys are tearing up the street to build this hospital, would be awesome if you put a bike lane in. At what point in time do I advocate for that? Is it too late after I already see the trucks and the construction workers? Or how do I make my voice heard as someone who lives in that immediate community to say, would you mind go ahead and putting in a bike lane on Lotsford Road while you're doing the work?
Hi, Robin. Let me respond to that one because my main function with the planning department is development review. But I did want to first go back to your first question about who do you call? And Bob gave a lot of information regarding the Department of Parks and Recreation Trails. But I posted on our website for the our active transportation advisory group. We have a website, and under useful information, we list not only Department of Parks and Recreation, but also who to contact if it's a state highway, or if you have an issue with a county roadway made by the Department of Public Works and Transportation. So that was a very good question. The second part, if you see them tearing up Lotsford Road or some other road, it's probably too late if they don't already have a bike lane in to ask. However, we have a countywide, we have a master plan of transportation throughout the county. And on that list are, I guess hundreds would probably be okay, sections of roadway that we have plans on to say, well, when this section gets developed, we would want to see these type of facilities on there. And I'll give just an example. I'm working on reviewing a section of a master plan community in Brandywine called the Villages at Timothy Branch. And part of this, there's already a planning board condition of approval when this developer comes in. He has to build part of the Timothy Branch Trail through his project. And he also has to build a side path along Brandywine Road that abuts the property. So there's a mechanism in place to address those concerns as part of the development process, and to say before they can get a building permit, they have to show that they have the money to do this. And just to go just a little bit in detail, we have adequate facilities provision, which says when a developer comes in, they have to show that there's adequate bicycle and pedestrian facilities in the area, or during the time of, by the time they get their building permit, or they may have to be required to pay for facilities that have already been on our plan. Finally, I've said a mouthful, but finally, we are updating our 2009 Master Plan of Transportation over starting this summer. And we certainly will be looking for community input. And if you're able to attend our next ATAG meeting on June 7th from 7 to 8:30, we'll have the final agenda posted shortly. We will be taking questions, and we can provide an update on that MPOT, Master Plan Transportation update that's coming up. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, and so I can sign up for that meeting on the website, the ATAG website.
Yes, or send an email to me, and I'll make sure that you're on the list. It's a Teams meeting, and then we give out the information on how to join on the afternoon of the meeting for people that have signed up and said that they're interested.
Okay, great, thank you.
We'd love to have your input.
I have a question. My question is, how do we find out the priority of a project? How have it been prioritized?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question.
So let's see if I think I understand your question, Laurie. If it's like a commercial property, or a shopping center being redeveloped, or maybe they're putting up some residential housing. Let's see, the best way I can say that is, what is the best way? Well, these development applications that come in are public knowledge, and the applicant has to say, for example, what their intent is. For this particular project, it's in a adult living community. For this particular one, the developer wants to build 102 single-family homes and 110 duplex units, which I think are the townhouses with two floors for one family on one level and 2 floors above. And so that's their intention to do that. And this is going to be for people who are aged, I think 55, or there's some age restriction for like seniors. So I'm not too sure if that's answering your question about what the priorities. So that's the developer's priority there.
No,
I would love to try to take a stab at that if you don't mind.
Okay, I could answer that too. If you want to go ahead.
Well, I'm going to give you an advocate's answer, which is that the county has a ton of great plans. And I say great plans because if you look at the 2009 Transportation Master Plan, you'll find that literally every road in the county is planned for a bikeway. Now we are 12 years after that plan was finalized, and if you compare, actual to what's on the plan, you'll find that most of those lovely lines on the map have not actually been realized into bikeways. Some have, absolutely, and I think development is a really effective way of getting a developer to pay for these improvements. But we can't really hope that a developer will come and rebuild every section of roadway and every property in the county. It's a great long-term strategy, but the other part of that answer and about priorities, we as people who, or I should say, I don't live in the county, but I live very close to the county. We as people who care about what happens on these roads have a lot of authority and a big role in determining what those priorities are. So if something is important, coming together, getting some friends together, making a stir, finding the people who have some authority over that road, if it's a county road, going to the county department, and saying, hey, look, it's in the plan. What are we going to do about this? Can we get funding for this? Is it technically feasible? We can set the priorities. Certainly things will happen at their own pace, but that pace is change over a 40-year period, which many people are unsatisfied with. With no disrespect to folks like you, Michael and Bob, who are working day in and day out to make these things happen.
Well, yeah, as citizens, you're also responsible for convincing your county council people to set up a planning and budgeting process that generates better outcomes. And that's really complicated. You might have to go get a planning degree to figure that out. But the priorities are usually set by the agency that controls the money. So state money, there are programs that local communities apply for. So you have to be engaged with an agency and with the process of saying, what's that program? What are the criteria? Should we be putting this project into that state program for funding requests? The county has a capital budget. So, and DPW&T said, we're going to spend 15 million over 5 years, 3 million a year. Well, this month they said they're prioritizing all the recommendations that they got on those maps. And so they're going to release a set of priorities. So they're prioritizing things based on how much money they're willing to spend over a period of time. The Parks Department, we did a strategic trails plan that created a priority list. But the Parks Department every year evaluates how it's going to spend its capital money. Those strategies and plans can change. Also, we have trails in which are a priority for us, but we don't control all the land that the trail is going to go on, and we don't control all the money that it's going to take to build it. So the bottom line is these things happen based on opportunity. And this is why it's 2020 and we're still trying to make our streets bikeable. And Europe, they already did it. They're done. Opportunity bounces all over the place, and you end up with trails that don't go all the way to where you need to go, and bike lanes that stop in random spots because the developer put in the bike lane for 5 blocks and that was all they were responsible for, and nobody could hold them to do more, or nobody came back and said, we'll bring this to a logical endpoint. And
could I cut in there real quick?
yeah,
and forgive me, Lori, for usurping your role here. Just keeping an eye on the clock here. You bring up that there are opportunities that happen all the time. And here my phone, of course, is ringing. That's another opportunity. To reiterate another question that came up earlier, I think it was Robin's. What's the best way for you, Bob, and for you, Michael? What's the best way for regular folks to sort of hear about these opportunities, to learn about the important meetings where decisions are being made, where input is being solicited? Are there county listservs that people should get on? Are there particular web pages that people should be paying attention to?
No, I think it's doing what you're doing now, as building the relationships with the staff and the different agencies, knowing who they are and building them, and with your county council people. Because, you know, we all have work that drives information to us that creates opportunities, and that catches some things. But there's also, you mentioned, Garrett, there's putting pressure on things when an opportunity is recognized, it moves a little bit forward, and you got to make sure it doesn't stop. But it also takes education. So advocates went to the city of Hyattsville and said, municipalities can ask SHA to help them build a trail on a state road. And no, SHA said, well, we're not redoing Route 1 in Hyattsville for a really long time. So they went to their state elected official, who just started putting pressure on them, saying, you guys need to build this trail. It's on your road, and it needs to finish the trolley trail. And so you create opportunities come along, opportunities evaporate, and a lot of factors go in, like, does that agency have enough money to do that? You know, what are the competing interests? Our parks capital budget can have a ton of competing interests, giant buildings, swimming pools, historic property rehabilitation, and a bazillion other things. So it takes, every year, the bike advocates every year have been coming to our budget hearings and speaking about trails. And that goes a long ways, because our Park and Planning Board commissioners are they're really down with trails. So they keep asking the staff, what are we doing about trails? So
we have to
yeah,
because of the time. So, and I just wanted to say that the reason I asked that question, because back in 2009, I did contribute to the master plan that came out, and then I don't know what happened to it. I never saw anything. And being a naive citizen, I didn't know where to go to or who to approach on that. So with saying that, this was really a great webinar meeting. I would like to thank everyone for joining and participating. I hope that questions was answered. Stephanie, Garrett, Bob, Michael, thank you very much for all your participation. And Stephanie, Garrett, any closing words?
No, thank you so much, Lori. Thank you, Robin, for disseminating this. Really appreciate it. I will follow up with the group with some notes and a recording if you want to share it with friends, family, anyone that wasn't able to be here tonight. Definitely want to build up more advocates across the county. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.